I think the proposition clearly misunderstands about the nature of this mission. We believe that the burden is that about why when you challenge China, why when you impose such tariffs to the people, why will not do counter sanctions, why is there going to be political instability, why international relations between Europe and China will be bad, and how will that impact to the Europe as a whole, which is not engaged by all in the setup and both the arguments of the proposition speech earlier. Very proud to oppose. Firstly, though, I'm going to reframe several things. I'm going to challenge their definition on the urgency and the status quo on the China itself and about the cars itself. We believe that, okay, they say that Chinese cars has a lot of unregulated as it is, right? We believe that the China dominance is still based on the status quo. It is still justified. China is important enough they can basically influence any country, especially Europe, with their close geographical positions, with the soft power, hard power, especially in terms of electric cars, and technologies, which is really the huge power of China as it is, right? If you actually bring tariffs as it all, you will bring less minimum trade. You'll bring a lot more, doubts in the China in itself to actually determine about how they would still continue to trade. They would continue to still going in economic agreements with Europe as it all. Okay, they say next to my proposals though. They say that it will limit growth by you allowing the China to still keeping unregulated growth in the Europe in itself. It will limit growth in the Europe itself, right? Several responses. Firstly, I think they don't reflect to the status quo where car industry in Europe is still thriving. For example, like there's still like high-end car, for example, like Volkswagen, BMW, or even Ferrari, they're still happening in the status quo. It is needed. Consumerism, it is needed to improve the innovation of them to actually prosper. But okay, if they want to talk about sustainability, let's talk about sustainability, right? I think the way, like how you won't allow the tariff to be imposed to the Europe itself will actually be better in our side. Okay, we bring competition, we bring innovation to the Europe in itself. We believe that they in Europe, let's characterize the cars in Europe. Let's actually characterize the cars in Europe. They're actually mainly based on engines, right? And not in electric cars. Basically, Volkswagen, Ferrari, all of the majority that cars that are produced in Europe are based on only the engine cars. And if, yes, they engage something about sustainability, but they don't explain to it further. But I will flip this and why sustainability will begin more in their side. Okay, we believe that it will bring more competition. For example, if the Europe realized that with the growing with the growing number of electric cars in China, for example, even if the motion clearly said that the European will be realized that they're doing something wrong with their tariff. For example, the European will realize that they're later, please. The Europeans will realize that what they have to do is that they have to actually improve. They have to transfer to a more sustainable way, not by actually just rejecting that as at all. We believe that we would still limit those growth by those reasons. Okay, but nextly though, on the terms of good relationship, I think the good relationship with China and Europe will not happen because counter sanctions exist in their side. We believe that by actually imposing tariffs at all, we believe that the possibility of counter tariff and counter sanction, for example, by the China in itself will still happen, and there's actually be the worst scenario in the Europe after all because they actually need China in anything. There's no likelihood in their explainments about the good relationship in itself, which is why we believe that their argument will stand after all. Nextly though, let's actually challenge their definition. Why it actually this is going to be harmful. First, I think this will harm the economic growth in the people in itself and how China and both Europe will be impacted. We believe that if they want to talk about, they want to prioritize local products, we have explained to you earlier, but how we can still innovate and bring competition to the local product itself by actually bringing the electric cars in China, for example, by you bringing a lot of foreign development to the cars itself. We think that they would improve instead of just not letting them go or just posing hefty tariffs as it is, which is very harmful. Okay.
Giving hefty tariffs is different from just allowing it in status quo, so competition still exists on the outside anyway. Please just.
Okay, the point about giving hefty tariffs after all is that the fact that you actually impose a lot of expensive cars in Europe in itself. So that's why we believe that the competition won't happen in their side because people will just likely to buy more cheaper cheaper European cars, for example. I think this won't be happen, and the competition and innovation and the progressive act that the proposition wants to do will not happen. But moving on to my arguments, though, why it's actually I will provide one argument about why their harm will be more in their side. I will provide two main points in my case. Firstly, about the response by the China in itself and why is it going to be harmful if they stop to if they going to limit the agricultural import, for example. I think this will be bad. Okay, so what is the context for this argument? I think the China responses would be bad because of this, and this is very likely because of the idea of counter tariff exists in the status quo. The idea of economic sanctions by one country to another exists in the status quo, where you actually bring no imports, no export, where you are actually limiting them in their side. When you actually challenge China by giving them tariff, you will make their products to be more expensive to your village, for example. I think this will be harmful because they can just do a lot of challenge such as counter tariff, for example. They will limit the products that is beneficial for the European, for example, to actually improve in their technology, because we believe that, okay, China can still decide to just stop producing micro, for example, to stop producing technology, and I think this is very harmful. And why is this very likely? Okay, first stated to you before that in Cyrus Code, there's a lot of economic sanction, and and it could still be happen instead of diplomatic relation that's going to be happening in such. But why is this very important though? We believe that the China in itself is very important to ensure the quality of a lot of countries in the status quo, especially the European Union, which is geographically close to China, right? They depend a lot of their other resources, their agriculture even, and especially their technology. Even if they have their own, even if you argue that they can still grow by themselves, it will still not be significant. The China is still in the status quo is still the most topping supplier in the status quo with the technology and etc. Even if the government said that it will help the European cars to thrive, at the end of the day, not only that you will provide less competition, you will also require more parts, more relationship to the status quo. They can't really dismiss that. This is their whole burden about why when you challenge China, this kind of things don't happen. Secondly, though, I think this is exclusive to us because we give the interest for the people in itself, we give choice to people in itself. For example, there's no market diversification in the government side. We believe that we will bring a better diversification, which is very important for the market growth in Europe, for example. When you actually limit all those kinds of things to happen, Europe if you actually limit, if the China, when you give the tariff, when they actually counter section, when they actually limit, the European Union can actually survive without it. And I think this is very important in it all. I think they have to defend about how the political relationship, how even in terms of sustainability and the competition and innovation will still happen in their side, how their side is still better, because we clearly give you the benefit that we will still maintain relationship with China, we'll still import and export will still be happen, so that we will still benefiting from both sides. China and Europe will still be happy with this guys, unlike those irrational decisions to impose tariffs, which just will make the cars to be more expensive, which make the cars more expensive, for example, and will be just harming the relationship with China. After all, international relations will become more on their side. I think government really can't defend that. Very, very proud to oppose.
Okay, I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judges, let's recognize national economic values, and what we mean by that is to really analyze how, to an extent, certain policies must be considered and applied to maintain stability and provide existing growth within an economic status of a certain country. Within this debate, we are talking about the economic status and even growth that we are protecting, which is the European country. We do not ever later on we will clarify some things, but for now there will be a couple of things that I will contribute, which is some clarifications, some further framing, as well as some responses towards what the opposition side of the house has stated, as well as some further arguments that will eventually show you that clearly this isn't something that we need to overreact of, because it is something that is prominent and needed to be done in our status quo within the economic status and international relationships. Starting off with some clarifications, we to say that when we say how this to talk about this, when we say that we would apply and support this motion, we did not ever tell you that giving hefty tariffs are something to limit with the to the point where we are disallowing it in the status quo, so competition will still exist anyways. So with that, it kind of is a rebuttal towards what the opposition side of the house said. And clearly, these kinds of competitions that they have provided is still going to exist from our side of the house. Although we are going to emphasize it again, it will be limited. Continuing on to some other clarifications and supports, we talked about how the main contribution of vehicles, specifically in these European countries, are from China. And from that, we would like to characterize how this is prominent, and it's because China is a developed country. The most of innovations, especially within technology-wise, and even to the point of vehicles and transportations, it is no longer something we are unfamiliar with when we are talking about the country of China. They have a more advanced mindset within what they can do with technology, and therefore it sort of gives us a sense that if we do not apply this kind of limitation, we would eventually see how the European countries are just going to be dependent towards China. And we definitely do not want that, because in the end, although there will still be competitions, we still want to maintain a good relations, as well as a state where the own country is growing, not to say that it's growing by itself, but to say that it's growing not because of a dependency towards other countries. Continuing on, we also state how there is still a minimum production of vehicles all around the world even. So that is, we would like to characterize how that is why, because these innovations only have, China is the only country that have the resources, and these resources aren't really spread. Instead, it's just the end results. And for that, again, we go back to the factuality that is dependency, and we do not support that. Continuing on, EU has a lot of power, of course, due to other good relations with other countries. And so when we talk about this limitation, we would like to clarify that it doesn't mean we limitate these importation between other countries other than China, but specifically we want to limit from China because, again, the points I've mentioned before. EU is not dependent on what resources China can provide for this current status quo, which is something we would like to maintain. And so that is why, although allowing this hefty tariffs, we would like to note that in the end, we will provide you arguments why the relations internationally will still be kept within China and the European countries. European citizens, what we have an issue with, to emphasize the issue, is that we are afraid that the most European citizens will instead take up upon wanting only the most best products, which is not even the local products within what they can provide. And for that, it will, yes?
Isn't the point of Chinese products because they're cheap, not because they're high quality? The point is, if you want to buy a high quality product, you buy European products.
All right, I will respond to that. Basically, what the opposition side of the house did not consider is about preference. Sure, maybe they are considered cheap. Maybe they aren't really that high quality. That's why they bought them. But then again, we should recognize how people have their own preferences within the vehicles and transportations they want to pursue. So we need to understand that it doesn't really limitate how much they could be dependent towards the country of China. Continuing to a couple of response. Firstly, again, about how the opposition side of the house constantly talked about how there won't really be any problem if we don't just apply this limitation. And for that, again, we would like to emphasize on the how it could build, if we do not apply this, it could build a sense of dependency and slavery towards for the citizens towards China's within the dominance of their innovations. Instead, what should be nurtured is a healthy competition. And that is why when we talked about competition, we see how we shouldn't be comparing these products in a more competitive and eliminating way, we should see how there's a healthy competition, because there is also other things in the market other than vehicles that could be in a trading affair that we can provide in this status quo. Continuing on to second respond, the main concern isn't that the local products will disappear in an instant, but clearly what we want to argue is that there's going to be a clear economic and innovation. There is going to be no clear economic and innovation growth within the country of Europe, because within the nation there is no initiative that will happen with developers in a vehicle context, because they feel like the competitions when compared sometimes is going to be too tight or overpowering, even overcrowding. What I mean by that is because these developers are going to see that their innovations is in the end not going to really be bought, because they feel like there is a cheaper option maybe, or there is an option where it is from not from their local nation. Continuing on, when we talk about political relationship later on, we will try to discuss that in our arguments. When we talk about our arguments, we would like to assure you that when we have characterized a eurozone, and when we characterize eurozone, it shows how it is an economic bloc and market within an economy and trading market that pursues the euro currency. And that is why when we talk about how we will maintain this relationship, because in the end, what we provide to them, although there is a tax, it'll still go through the euro currency, and therefore it'll be a less given out by to them. And so that is why within all of these reasons we pursue how there is going to still be growth, because it doesn't limit competitions, but instead it creates a healthy competitions. And it doesn't limit the vehicle. We're not saying that we should limit the vehicle, but instead we want to provide more efficiency within the growth of the nation of Europe. And for that, all of those reasons, we are proud to propose.
Does proposition wants competition, or do they want to promote national economy? This is a big contradiction in their case, where they promote the fact that they want to promote local products and stuff and such, but they also don't want to be, oh, we don't want to limit the fact that people can still buy Chinese cars because of preferences. So what do you want exactly? There's a big contradiction in this case. We want the clarification on this later on inside of their third speaker at least. But panels, there's a big misunderstanding in this debate, which is the fact that tariffs imply limitation. Tariffs imply discouragement. The fact is, if you're a European living inside of Europe and you want to buy Chinese cars, but you have to pay 50% extra, there's no way that you want to do that, because you'd rather buy like a Toyota or a Hyundai or something like that, right? This entire debate is about whether or not these exact limitations are going to be impactful for Europe in the positive or in the negative, right? But before I move on to my reframing, I'm gonna talk about their entire argument, which is the fact that they just want to promote like local businesses or national economy, or like they want to have their Europeans focus more on local products. Several responses here. First of all, there is no urgency in this debate. Well, a side proposition, there's no tangibility on the fact that, oh, if we have national economy, so what? Right? If people buying your local products, so what? Right? At the end of the day, there is no inherent harm for you to buy other products, even if they claim that from some side of, China is going to be the global superpower or going to be the global dominator of all economy. Well, that's not First of all, that's not inherently going to be true, because there's always going to be other factories. We don't live in a vacuum, right? At the end of the day, there's always going to be Russia. There's always going to be USA. There's always going to be Indonesia or like India or some other places, right? At the end of the day, it's not just between Europe and China, and therefore we cannot buy any of their arguments. But regardless of that, we don't even see why it's such a bad problem if Europe relies on China in the first place, because Europe is a place that is inherently reliant on other countries, specifically because they don't have any agriculture, and the only thing that they have is basically industries, right? That's all that they can offer. And at the end of the day, if you're really going to rely on China, we don't see the problem here, right? But even if there is a problem here, we still believe that it's untrue that you're going to be promoting local businesses by like sanctioning China through their electric vehicles, because A, it's insignificant because it's literally only one sector, but B, you can talk with other brand manufacturers, for example, how you wanted to buy from Tesla, or you wanted to buy from I don't know, Toyota or Hyundai or some other Mazda, for example, even we don't understand how people like turning away from China makes them turn towards Europe, right? You can turn away from China and go to other international markets. So we don't specifically understand why it should be China, and therefore we cannot buy any arguments from side proposition. So let's reframe what this debate is really about. So we don't live in a vacuum, right? So the status quo is important here. A, we have international tensions already between Europe, and it's already impacting between Europe and China. It's already impacting in the fact of economic sanctions and political tensions, right? But especially because of the Russia-Ukraine war. But secondly, what do we think these tariffs look like? 50% on electric cars or just regular cars. This impact is obviously going to be discouraging local car dealers from buying Chinese cars and selling it to the European public, right? Exactly because of that, we believe that it is going to be extremely harmful for those who rely on these Chinese cars in order to be making a profit, if they want to like do that. And it's also going to be impacting those who rely on other markets exactly from China because of the counter sanctions that we told you in our LO. We're going to be elaborating on that in our second extension. But thirdly, what exactly are the characteristics of European? This is not something which has been really characterized well. First prop told us that all Europeans are rich. No way. There's obviously still a global poor inside of Europe, right? There's obviously going to be like, oh, people who are in the middle or low class, right? They're not all rich. But secondly, all of their markets are basically elitist. That is to say, all of them are like high quality products. The fact is, you want to maintain your quality over your quantity. That is to say, for example, high perfume brands like, I don't know, Yves Saint Laurent, or other products like, for example, how I told you about Volkswagen or Mercedes-Benz or Ferrari, right? They're all high quality products, and exactly because of this, the European people need an alternative. That is to say, including China. But thirdly, Europe is very reliant on imports. That is to say, everything that China imports towards Europe is inherently important for the running of Europe. Like if China imports, if you stop importing electric vehicles from China, wouldn't that be so impactful in a way that one of China's main markets is in fact their car industry, and therefore if you're stopping your imports into Europe, therefore you're going to be basically making them counter-action through other things. We'll take that POI.
At least on our side, we create competition by having by importing from other countries outside China.
You're blind 15. Well, of course you can, but that's symmetric on both sides, right? At the end of the day, your entire case on your first and second speaker was because you wanted to promote local businesses off of stopping China. So if you want to promote, if you're talking about China or nothing else, then that's symmetric on both sides. We don't believe that's relevant to this debate at the end of the day. Well, what we believe the real burden of this debate is less on cars, because of course you have cars all over the world for many car manufacturers, right? It's more unlike indirect impacts, which we'll talk about in our extensions. We already told you on economy how there's going to be counter-sanctions from China, and why the likelihood of that is exactly because China is so reliant on their car markets, and you don't want to promote good marketing relationship with China. Therefore, they're going to counter-sanction you, right? Because Europe is so reliant at the end of the day, it's going to impact them very badly. But on politics, we also told you we're in the middle of a war, and we don't need any more polarization between Europe and Russia, Europe and China. Because of that, we're just going to go out and all-out war, and we need more peace and democracy. We won't be talking about that. We already told you about that in our first speaker. But now onto my extension. Very quickly, on the point of sustainability and protecting the minorities. First of all, on the points of sustainability, the context of this debate is that we're mostly talking about electric vehicles, right, which are imported. And European cars are mainly manufactured, and they're still traditional, they're still elitist, because you want to maintain the classic look or something like Volkswagen or Mercedes-Benz, right? Two pillars of sustainability that are relevant to this debate are economic and environmental. We believe the people who win this debate on sustainability are those who prove you on economic who maintains less inflation and good relations, and secondly, environmental who has more green cars. This is significant because without it, Europeans going to slow down or going to regress or even going to collapse without sustainability, right? So how do we achieve this on our side? We believe that in terms of environment, so we're going to having more green cars because we're importing them from China, right? We're not limiting ourselves to Tesla from America. We're also having them from China, which are more cheap, by the way, because of ruling. But secondly, on terms of dealers, they're more also incentivized to buy this from China because they're cheaper. But thirdly, even in the case that they buy, there's going to be less inflation because you're not paying them, like paying the government so much tax, right? And thirdly, there's going to be better relations with China, basically because there's not going to be counter-sanctions, right? Even on our worst-case scenario, the a priori is that we at least giving you a capability or a choice to buy Chinese products, right? But comparatively, even on government's best case, they're at least at the best is that they're going to have sour relationships with China because you're having a tax you're specifically targeting towards China, right? Which makes them villainized inside of Europe, but also inside of China. We believe that this is inherently bad for any markets that is happening inside of status quo because of the importance of the market, the car market in China, right? So how do we manifest benefit on our side of the house? We think that A, through better developments of sustainability, through better relationships, through better less inflation, for example, and through better environmental sustainability. But B, we also have easy in our economy because we're buying Chinese products which are less expensive. But C, we fulfill the interest of European countries for all the above reasons so proud to propose.
Message and one. Panels, opposition never listened to our case when even in the very beginning, our first speaker has already explained to you why the lack of international relation won't be there. Why like the competition was still there. It's already being like explained by our previous speaker. I don't think opposition ever listened to our case, but few clarification under side opposition. Firstly, about the cheapness of Chinese cars. Opposition in the whole case does not realize the impact of this cheapness. And like panels, my PM clearly stated to you that this cheapness and low quality itself is the whole cause of consumerism and dependency. We clearly stated to you how in the makes innovation it then like will make innovation hindered. That's why we want to limit it. Positive impacts for the EU will be created. This is urgent in the monotonous of market dominance. But second clarification, how our site will create a bigger sense of identity belonging in Europeans. We under our side of the house, buying, endorsing, and etc. their own nation's product is urgent as it is within as like this is can will bring bigger sense of identity belonging where they are buying things are from their own nations where at the end of the day we achieve a bigger sense of identity on our side of the house. But in third clarification about the quality over quantity under side opposition, the cars in EU, which are higher quality, should have been within the interest of Europeans. Here, consumerism and dependency are avoided. We think this is urgent. But also, under side opposition, they say we don't bring any urgency. But I don't think at the end of the day they also bring any urgency under their side of the house. But like a clash under this motion. Under side opposition, the goal is for sustainability and a long-term benefit in the current status quo, right? The idea that is that the tariffs are hinder the competition and will actually cause a very bad harms towards this sustainability. But several rebuttals to this. Firstly, this is a wrong idea to bring in this debate. In the very first place, we even already engage you that giving tariff doesn't mean disallowing the market to happen in the current status quo, and so the market will still be there, the trade will still be there, and at the end the competition will still be there. What's really problematic under opposition side of the house, opposition's idea is only heavy on that EU really need China in the current status quo. I think that is true. EU also need China in the market, but they also should consider that China also needs EU at the end of the day in the current status quo. So like raising tariffs won't really mean that China will just cut the connection between the people of EU. At the end, China will still need EU for their national economics, and this is what opposition has to consider. So at the end of the day, like the market will still there, and this is still achievable under our side of the house. But second rebuttal, tariff is we think like the tariff is a way that's actually going to improve the competition, where at the end of the day we let China to actually sort the products and like market going to be to have the best cars, since it was for it to be balanced with the high tariffs. So like the market itself will be improved and developed more on the outside of the house. But what's the weighing in this debate? Under outside the house, we have like more wider benefit, where we support the tariffs to be there as a form of national economic and technology development. We think this is very urgent for EU's nations, since they are capable to do so. They are actually could do it in the current status quo, but and like giving tariffs is a form to let this kind of development to be there in the current status quo. So there's a space for society to focus more on their own product, to focus to invent more towards their nation. This brings more bigger sense of identity belonging in Europeans. But secondly, this is a very long term benefit, since when you let the innovation to be there, when you let people to like recognize their potential on their own nation, this is a very long term benefit, since you let in the current status quo to be like improvement towards the economic, where they could do it themselves, and will be like will bring like so many benefit. They could do the export themselves. They could achieve like more higher economical benefits at the end of the day. We think this is what urgent. We think opposition already lost this debate from the very beginning. Proud to propose.
Three key points of framing in my speech here, panels. First of all, we cannot deny that China has high technological advancement, human resources, and strategically and geographically close to Europe country and another country that is fiat, that also claimed by the proposition set of the House, right? But secondly, we cannot deny that China has a big contribution regarding the export and import in the global market, and also it already claimed by the proposition set of the House. But thirdly, we cannot deny that China has a big and strong political power towards these European countries, right? That's why we are supporting the hefty tariffs of Chinese cars will impacting to the other economic sectors and political relationships that we are going to talk about in this debate, right? But the biggest question coming from the proposition set of the House is that why don't China needs EU, right? That's the biggest question, because they already have many target market that outside of the Europe itself. For example, these another Asian countries, right? That is the biggest question that never been touched and never answered by those three speakers, right? Okay, there will be two clashes in my speech. First of all, on the impact of the economy, and secondly, the impact to the political relationship, right? Okay, first of all, talking about my first clashes, three things that they talk about in this debate. First of all, they talk about against the market and economy dominations, right? But there is no explanation, there is no likelihood of how then they're going to be able to maintain their economic stability without this China products, without this China export and import at the end of the day. But secondly, they also want to promote their local products, which we cannot see the urgency here on why don't they just lower the price of that domestic products in their side without actually limiting these products from the China, these cars from the China itself, right? That's the biggest question, that meaning that they are two best case in this debate, right? But two problems in these clashes. First of all, they talk about European that is actually able to buy all of the Europe products, right? Within that, it is actually two jumping logic. There is no reason that they bring in this debate. Yes.
if you think at the end of the day China don't need you, I think at the end the connection of the economic relationship will never be there in the status quo. But that's what happened in the status quo. What are your perspectives?
Yes, exactly. That is what's happening in the current status quo, right? That because the urgency of this economic cooperation that happened right now is just because of the European itself that actually needs the import products, the imported car that is mainly all of them, mainly most of them is actually electric, right? That's why it is actually the because exactly what exists in this European country is for example that the example that you said about cars produced by the Germany, right? We already told you in our speakers that there is most likely mainly engine, right? That's why they are actually the one that needed this at the very first place. Okay, moving on to my point of clashes. Back to my point of clashes. And first of all, we didn't adhere to jumping logic, and there is no reasons, right? And because the moment that they told us that these all European people is actually able to buy all of the expensive product, we didn't. It is too unrealistic because the fact that there are people who cannot buy European products at the very beginning with and choose to buy the cheaper product itself, and you cannot deny that there is incentive for people to always buy the cheaper product, for example, right? Even if all people at the end of the day, if all European people able to buy expensive products, wouldn't they already lose at the point of maintaining economic stability at the very beginning, right? But secondly, they talk about less consumerism that they're going to propose in this debate, right? Within that, their only reasons is because the product from China is actually cheap, hence will create more consumerism under these European people. Okay, first of all, we think that there is no likelihood because we don't see any explanation and any example on how then less consumerism is going to happen under their side of the house because exactly there is no parameter of how then they're going to change the price of these expensive European products at the very beginning, right? But secondly, we think that they are already contradictory at the very beginning with because the moment that they said there will be less consumerism that they are going to propose, they are contradictory because they also bring another argument on literally promoting their local products at the very beginning with and talking about the preferences of these European people towards certain products. It means that they already contradicted by they want people to buy the local products, but they don't want people to be consumerism, right? But we think that our side better because exactly. No, thank you. There will be more competition for all, and we think that the competition under our side is going to be better because exactly we are creating the more symmetric competition, right? After all, because we let this imported product within the fit and match tax at the very beginning, right? Comparatively on the other side of the house, because we don't want to create inflation at the very beginning with. It is fear that when we give more tax towards the imported cars, it will create a higher price that will impact the another products, right? And we want economic stability because we don't want to take any risk because their mechanization is going to be too risky because we don't want to backlash in the progress that is already happening. No, thank you. In this society, it is a fight that every country wants economic stability in order to get this long-term benefit itself, right? Because we think that the harm under their side is going to be significant because that quantity of people there is more minority is much bigger than the upper class people, right? It is they are the one that is going to be impacted and get changed to be laid off. The workers have a chance to be laid off, and the company itself is going to be bankrupt and whatsoever, right? Comparatively, under our side of the house, we think that there will be less possibility to create these inflations. And even if yes, it will going to create inflation, we think that there are also externalities because at least under our side of the house, we don't worsen the status quo and backlashing the economic market, right? So moving on to my second clashes then on the political impact. No. First of all, they say that the relationship will still exist. That the only reason is trading in commodity sector that we already told you the rebuttals on our DLO, right? But secondly, they also talk about EU is actually powerful. Within there is no explanation on why then this political power is actually already enough because the characteristic of economy and characteristics of political world is that they want more alliances to help them in some certain extent, right? They never give an analysis on how then China will respond to these hefty tariffs, right? There are two best cases by guaranteeing that good relation because China will feel blocked out, right? even if knowing that China is going to notice the system that more change, there will be more chances for them to change their markets at the very beginning with. Compared to on the other side of the house, we already understand that China is really powerful. They have big and wide connections and alliances in global world, right? And that's why we want we emphasize on the principle of interconnectivity and interdependency, where we want to pursue political stability to maintain good relations with China itself. And how then? Two reasons. First of all, the moment that we let China to import their cars, and secondly, the moment that there will be no hefty tax, it will maintain our good relationship in terms of cooperation, right? But secondly, when it is going to be beneficial, because first of all, when China will feel accepted, and hence there will be more incentive to cooperate in long term. But secondly, we think that China will more likely to be our alliances to help us when something happens, and the same goes to the China itself, right? But third of all, even if at the end of the day it will never be manifest, we will not get the help from China at the very beginning with, we think that it is still okay, because under our side of the house, at least we still maintain the good relation in terms of cooperation and in terms of political world, right? That's why we're very, very proud to oppose.
Slight trigger warning. On a scale of here to here, proposition is extreme here, because their entire burden is they want to prove how they're going to promote European local identity, better local businesses, better local economy, but they're specifically targeting China, right? We don't understand why they wouldn't propose these benefits in a motion that would claim like a European wants to increase their local tax to 15% rather than 10% in the context side, for example. So we don't understand specifically why everything you have to target China, right? But beyond that, which we posited to you in our DLO already, beyond that, the most important argument in this debate was the indirect impacts, right? Because we both agreed that we're not really talking about the cars because there's more than enough alternatives, right? So which side can prove to you who has the better indirect impacts, we obviously win, right? We already told you we're going to have counter sanctions, we're going to have more better political tendencies, we're going to have better sustainability on our side of the house, simply because we want to maintain good relationships with China, because we want there to be this sort of narrative that we're not specifically targeting China, right? In terms of any sort of anything, right? In terms of any sort of market. At the end of the day, this is specifically because China has such a big car market, and because they're so focused on these factories, on cars, and exactly because of this, we want to make China feel as if they're our friend. But regardless of that, side proposition, all they're saying on like maintaining good relationships is that China still needs the EU. This is something which I also find quite curious, because this was posited by the third speaker, which is A, very late, but B, we also questioned this in our opposition whip, but we also didn't get any likelihood as to why China actually needs EU. We didn't get any explanation on this, regardless of their POI, right? They just asked the question to our opposition whip. And because of that, we think at the end of the day, it's not really inherent in the fact that Europe needs China, but at the end of the day, we need to make sure like China needs us, right? Because of that exact principle, we need to make sure that China values us as a place where they can sell, for example, just basically just their cars. And exactly for that exact reason, we just want to make them feel at home right here, right? But at the end of the day, we also told you about how sustainability is going to be better on our side, specifically because we have better relations, we have more green cars and all of that. But we also told you specifically that not everyone in Europe is rich, and we all need to focus on less elitist products which are not from Europe, for example. Like, they also didn't characterize the products of Europe being so expensive and how it's much cheaper for you to import foreign products from exactly China, right? Exactly because of that, we believe at the end of the day, we win this debate solely because we already proved to you how we have to maintain good relationship with China, because side proposition never gave us any burden other than that. But regardless of that, we also want to posit it to you that their identity arguments on how they wanted to clarify like there's going to be better local businesses and local economy because of identity came in their third speaker, which is already late matter. But regardless of that, we already posited to you in our third speaker that that's completely relevant to the debates when everything is going to be cheaper, because exactly because consumerism is important. Exactly, that's what runs the economy inside of status quo. Everything in this debate goes to side opposition. We don't see any sort of exclusive benefits from side proposition. Even on cars, we already win this debate because we're giving more capability to the poor rather than having you focus on elitist European cars. For all the above reasons, so proud to oppose.
Judges, we are able to provide you with a propelling debate today. And to begin, we would like to give out what the extensions and even explanation that we have provided as the proposition side of the House, because clearly within this debate, we find that there is no fair weighing, and it seems like the opposition side of the House is only focusing in responding to us without any clear foundation within their own arguments. Because in the beginning, the first speaker has never really addressed their urgency and gave a clear setup, and due to that, they couldn't even really provide the burden of proof, because it's clear that there's no sensible benefit that they want to achieve. So they're only engaging, yet there is no base foundation. So with that, we believe that when we weigh out, at least in our side, we provide you growth for the long-term benefit of the nation. Instead, the opposition side of the House did not clearly characterize most things, and I will later on tackle on that. But firstly, I would like to give you what we have provided. First, we talked about how we foster a healthy competition here. We see how the opposition side of the House also is in need of a competition in order to maintain some kind of benefit that they didn't really characterize. And here we would like to show you that it's not only exclusive on their side, because it's clearly also on our side, and even in our side, it's even healthier and not really a competition that can eliminate everyone in just a circumstances that they want. We want to oblige on the market of cars that are wholly branded as what they are made in China. We clearly stated to you, Judge, how bringing tariffs will open room and space for maybe there are other vehicles type cars, especially electronic cars from other countries, that could substance more in the quality range instead of just quantity that is provided by China. This is especially beneficial for EU car brands to be able to improve for the betterment of their countries, nations within innovations. Second, this concerns the first point. Innovation will exist more in our side clearly. We clearly stated how it is relevant, it is irrelevant urgent. Yes, this is another thing that we do not want there to be a monotone dominance of EU branded cars. We see that EU branded cars that increase in quality. So please weigh the likelihood of how within this European society characteristics is to judge. They want and could get higher quality brands. It is because it is relevant to the burden. Third, we talked about how we could abolish dependency and consumerism here. I think opposition compared this in their case. It's that how buying local cars creates dependency, which is wrong, Judge. Please do not buy these. At least we perceive how these local EU brands here is justified, and we still maintain the relations of the international international way between China and European countries on our side, because clearly in the beginning we have stated in the first place there will be no such thing as a economic trading relationship between EU and China if there was no dependency between both sides in the first place. And again, to further encourage you, we would like just to say how the opposition side of the House told us how we did not provide any likelihood of our mechanism, but even there, they did not provide any benefit from them as a clear way of urgency, as well as their likelihood isn't even clear as well. They talk about why China, they talk about how we talked about China needs us, when in the end, we see how the power here from the EU, they couldn't be bothered whether or not China is really in need. And for all of those reasons, we are proud to propose.
Thank you guys.